the birth plan on paper becomes less and less and less important when we really center it around that empowerment and being a part of every decision, like you said. There's literally no way that we could know every twist and turn. And I'm convinced after being in this work for this period of time, that's intentional. We're not supposed to know. It's preparing us for that postpartum period.
Before we begin, I want to share something special with all of you expecting parents out there. As an internationally board certified lactation consultant, I've seen firsthand how a little planning can go a long way to helping you achieve your baby feeding goals. That's why I'm offering you my free ebook. It's called Birth Practices to Support Breastfeeding, and it's a workbook. So check out the link in the description below. Many people get so confused about creating a birth plan. Their providers tell them, oh, it's not necessary, or you're not exactly sure what to put in the birth plan since you know you need to be flexible. So today, I'm so excited to bring to you this episode with Lisa about the idea of creating birth preferences versus a birth plan. So welcome to Lo's Lactation Lab. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh. I'm an internationally board certified lactation consultant, a certified childbirth educator, and a doula. So enjoy this episode. Hey, Lisa, so good to see you.
Yay, I can't wait to do this.
Yes. So I just want to give a little background before we jump into today's topic. You were a client first, and then you came on as like a collaborator, and we did the 12 days of postpartum Christmas, which was really, really fun. Since then, you have started your own podcast. So tell me a little bit about your podcast, and then we're going to talk about what we're getting into today.
Okay, awesome. So, Lo, you've inspired me across the board, I think. So first, I'm your client before being a birth worker myself. Then I'm a birth worker. Then I'm in the throes of trying to wean and utilizing virtual support that was just so helpful at the time. And now I'm following in your podcasting footsteps because I really think that you were able to get messaging to me that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to find. And so I've started what I've called the Empowered Pregnancy Podcast. And it's my way of getting information into the hands of pregnant women, women trying to conceive, and postpartum moms to talk about birth and birth planning and then what it looks like to have the newborn.
Right. Yeah. And, the fun thing about a podcast, it's always there. You've recorded the information. And so 5 years down the line, if there's somebody who has a question about something, you can say, listen to this episode. So it's a great resource for your own clients. And we decided that we're going to be doing a little more collaborating in the future. So we're not going to name how many episodes a month or anything because my listeners know I've been struggling to even get anything out. But I thought that today it would be really interesting to talk about the difference between birth preferences and a birth plan. And before I get into my why, I would love to know when you hear those two words, because we might be coming at this from different perspectives, what comes to mind for each of those terms?
This is such a juicy topic, and I think it's because it keeps coming up in my work with my clients. I have actually started to try to remove the word birth plan from my vocabulary because I think language is important, and the message that I send, I want to be really, really strategic. So I've actually been referring to the traditional birth plan as a birth map because too often we get hooked on an outcome. And I think that does more harm than good. So when you say the word birth plan versus birth preferences, for me, I really want clients and pregnant moms to think about it as a roadmap with different directions, different places where they may come to a crossroads and have to make a decision based on a number of criteria. So I think that preferences are really important because that is the education piece for me. Why do we want to know this information? Because we want to figure out what our preferences are and getting away from that word plan so that we can be a little more open minded and a little more detached from the outcome. That's what kind of comes to mind right away when you say that.
I know that when I 11 years ago was pregnant with my first child, and I would use the term birth plan with care providers. It was almost like they weren't rolling their eyes, but got this feeling like, yeah, this first time mom thinks she's going to be able to plan out something that's not plannable. But when I was using those words, what I really meant was these are my preferences. And one of the things that I talk to my clients about a lot is just making the next right step. And so creating I would say even goes as so far as to say a written birth preference sheet, whether that's typed out, whether it's drawings or a map, whether it's a vision board of some sort, or it's typed. Having a birth preferences sheet of some sort, map, I like that term, allows people to be able to think through what do I feel about the various options? And if A happens, then do I want to do B or do I want to do C? And I know for me over the years when I have worked with clients, either as a doula or now usually as a lactation consultant, people are afraid to say what their hopes are because if they say it out loud to other people and it doesn't work out, it feels like a failure. Whereas I almost get the attitude from people that if they go into it saying, "Well, I'm just gonna hope for the best," that they think they won't have that feeling of grief or failure if things don't go according to the plan, in air quotes. Do you encounter that at all? Like, the not even wanting to, like almost like sticking your head in the sand, not even wanting to know what the choices are because you're afraid that if you don't meet your goals, then you'll feel worse?
I agree with that. I think a lot of moms can resonate with that. I think that a big part of the resistance that we feel, whether it's obvious or not, from care providers is because the plan is written out in a certain way where it's like, if this doesn't happen, I'm not going to cooperate or something to that effect. And that is not the case. So I like to really hone in on the communication piece. I want clients to have those preferences and the research that backs those preferences in their head. So for me, it's like, forget what's on the piece of paper. That's a communication tool. So
Yes.
then, right? It's one tool. So here's a thought. Oftentimes my clients will say, I'm so surprised that my doctor just like flew in the last 15 minutes of my birth and they weren't really there for the duration of my labor. And so here I spent all this time making sure that my specific provider was on board with my plan. However, I had to communicate that over and over to all the other hospital staff if it was a hospital birth. So having the knowledge in your head as well as on a piece of paper, I think there's different advantages to having those different scenarios, but it's about how do you communicate those preferences?
Yes, and not just to your providers, to your partners, to your
Totally.
in-laws, to
Your
your
doula.
doula, right, to your lactation consultant. So when
Yes.
I do prenatal consultations, I start out with like, what are your fears? What are your hopes? What are you wondering about? What worries you? What are you thinking in terms of vaginal delivery versus cesarean delivery? And sometimes I have a client who says, yeah, I know already that my cesarean is scheduled on such and such date. And these are the reasons. I feel good with that decision. And so then we say, okay, so now we can focus your lactation preferences on knowing that you are going to be welcoming your baby into the world through a cesarean birth. Now, some clients go in saying, I really hope to have a vaginal delivery. I don't know what's going to happen. And then we talk about, okay, so what happens if you get to 39 weeks and you're being told you need to induce? How do you feel about that? And if they're like, whatever, then we might talk about how that could or could not impact the postpartum experience, lactation, the cascade of interventions that can happen. And then once they know that information, then they take that back to their partner and they say, or their doula or their mother, and they say, okay, this is what I'm thinking about. Let's talk through how we feel about this as a team so that then we are ready for these discussions with our care provider. And I think it just empowers people to feel more informed about the options. So it's a way to say, I am going to prepare as much as possible, knowing I can't control the outcomes, so that by the time I have my baby in my arms and it's 3 months postpartum, 4 months postpartum, 5 months postpartum, I'm feeling like, yeah, I took every next right step as it came. And I felt empowered because I knew the possibilities of what could happen.
Yeah. And knowing the possibilities, it takes work to find that education and sort through it and decide how you feel about it on a personal level. And one thing that came to mind when you said all of these questions that you ask, which are so valuable, is my favorite question, which is how do you want to feel? And I understand that that's like hard to conceptualize, hard to wrap our head around maybe and at first. But if we're not attached to an outcome and we are more concerned with that process and what we feel like when we step away from it or look back on it as an outsider or as in process, that is really, really important.
I love that. And I think almost everyone, there's a variety of feelings that people can have. They can feel ecstatic, they can feel exhausted, they can feel proud, they can feel uncertain, they can feel
Yes,
supported, they can feel unsupported. But I think almost everyone who is to think about this question in regards to the early postpartum period, they want to feel as if they have done the very best they could, regardless of what happened.
absolutely.
And for different people, that it could be completely different outcomes. But if they say, "You know what? This scenario got brought to me, and I made the best decision I could given the information I had, and the information I had was solid," that's when we don't have to deal so much with that postpartum grief or
Yeah,
that grief of losing a breastfeeding experience that we wanted to have. I have plenty of clients who I have to help make a different choice, whether it be that they are now exclusively pumping because body feeding isn't going the way they expected, or they're continuing to body feed, but they've decided to supplement. And most of the time, even if their plan has changed, they still feel really good because they know how they got to where they are, and they know that they have made all the right decisions that they could given what they knew.
I agree with that. And I think a lot of what I talk about is asking for what you want by clarifying what you don't want. So I think that if I ask the question, how do you want to feel? You can also flip that if it's easier to say, here's what I don't want. I don't want to feel manipulated. I don't want to feel coerced. I don't want to be talked down to. I don't want to be dismissed. I don't want to be told what to do in every situation because as a mom, you are the only one that knows what's best for you and your baby most of the time. And so I think that the birth plan on paper becomes less and less and less important when we really center it around that empowerment and being a part of every decision, like you said. There's literally no way that we could know every twist and turn. And I'm convinced after being in this work for this period of time that that's intentional. We're not supposed to know. It's preparing us. It's preparing us for that postpartum period.
Right, right. Yeah, that's so true. I was thinking about when you were talking about, asking the question, how does this make you feel? That I could use that more in my current life with a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. Like, I think about how often I go through life feeling grumpy towards my kids, feeling grumpy about getting dinner on the table, feeling grumpy about the feelings they might be having. And when I can stop and say, wait a minute, how do I want to feel as a mom? And how do I want my kids to feel as a part of my family? I don't want grumpiness or anger or frustration to be the primary mood that they think about when they look back on their childhood. So, if that's the way I want to feel relaxed with my family. I want to feel engaged with my family. I want to feel joyful with my family. I want to feel respected with my family. I want my kids to feel respected. I want to have autonomy. I want them to have autonomy. So, if those are the feelings I want, what do I need to change about the way I'm interacting? And I can give a quick example. It is so easy when our kids are, like, doing something that we're like, "Oh my gosh, why are you doing that?" Like bringing in a bowl of mud, right? Like, let's say the kids are out in the yard. This is real life at my house. My 6-year-old is, like, the messiest. So let's say she's bringing in a huge bowl of mud. My first response to her could be, "Oh my gosh, get that out of the house. What are you doing?" But if I can catch myself, I can stop. I can say, "Whoa, you're really working on something." I can give her eye contact and make a smile to let her know, like, "I enjoy you being around. I'm gonna smile at you when I see you." And then I still might not want mud in my house, but the mood might be, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, let's get this back outside and you can show me what you're working on." Or maybe stopping for a second. "Why are you bringing the mud into the house?" Maybe she has a plan and I just need to help her problem solve a different container or help her figure out a way that she can still have her needs met and I can have my needs met. And I think this is the same with lactation, right? Or birth or the postpartum experience. If you want to feel relaxed, if you want to feel at ease, if you want to feel empowered, then what are the ways that you need to change either the way you're thinking or what you're doing or who you're interacting with in order to get to that feeling? And those are the things we want to focus on in the birth preferences.
I love it. I love how it all threads through. I wish that I had been asked the question more, especially in those early postpartum days. I wish someone had said, "How do you want to feel?" Because then I would have been able to say, "I'm struggling to ask for help, but I know that this is how I'm feeling and this is not how I want to feel. And I know this is how I want to feel, but I don't know how to make that happen." And then I could have been inviting the help in to help me problem solve and critical think. And I just think that that is the common thread. Sometimes it takes more support to get to that answer, and it's a trial and error, so it's not always gonna work. And then we go back to the drawing board. So, getting the lactation support, joining my Fierce Mama circle for postpartum new moms, like whatever it is, you shouldn't feel bad or guilty or shameful about asking for that help.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just saw a prenatal client yesterday, and this is essentially her second baby. And she talked about how needy her first child was, like, and so I started to ask, "Oh, and now do you think he has, like, sensory needs?" And she's like, "Oh, yes, he's 2.5." And I was like, "Yeah, it's so funny in those early days until we really get to know our child, we keep trying to fix them."
Ugh.
And so I like to we talked a lot about this, you and I, because I had a very similar experience to you sensory-wise with my child. And until I stopped and said, "How do I wanna feel with my child? I wanna feel connected. I wanna feel like I'm meeting their needs." I continued to try to, like, fix sleep, fix feeding, fix the clinginess. And now I have a 10-year-old that still wants me to lay down with him in bed while he goes off to sleep. And I know I'm not going to have an 18-year-old wanting that. And so every night that I lay down with him, I'm wondering, is this going to be the last night? And in the moment, it's hard. But if I think about how do I want to feel 10 years from now, I want to feel like, yeah, we did it. I miss those days. They were hard. And I want to feel connected to my child. So I'm going to choose this hard thing right now. And not every night can I get there, but keeping the focus on how do I want to feel now and how do I want to feel 3 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now can really help kind of focus in on what the right choices are. And the right choices that you make might be different than the right choices I make. Your right choice might be, you know what? I want to feel like I can connect with my partner and I will connect with my child throughout the day. And I am not going to lay down with a 10-year-old. And that's
Yeah.
totally fine, but you
Yeah.
don't know what those answers are going to be until you ask yourself the question.
Yeah. And we don't want to get caught on an outcome, whether it's prepping for birth or postpartum or 10 years in, because then we give ourselves that permission to make that choice.
And we can pivot if we need to.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you brought up dinner, and I would beg to go out on a limb and say a lot of us don't love that we have to come up with dinner ideas and the grocery shopping. I mean, I went from loving cooking pre-baby to
Me
now
too.
every night I'm like, "Oh, the hell am I gonna make?"
Right.
So 5 years ago, you would have known me to make everything from scratch using all these great nutrient dense ingredients. And now I'm like, takeout would really put some ease into my evening. And I want to feel chill tonight with my family. And that's just a
Right.
pivot that I am making in this season. And that's okay.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. Okay, so I think this is good philosophical way of approaching this, and I don't actually think we have to get into the nitty-gritty of what it actually looks like to sit
No.
down and create that birth preferences, because if you are listening to this and you are thinking, "I am pregnant," or "I am in the early postpartum," and when I ask myself how I want to feel, I am not there, then what we need to do is need to reach out to Lisa for some empowered birth coaching, and you need to reach out to me for some lactation consultations. And I think we can both guarantee that we cannot deliver specific outcomes, but we can help you get to however you want to feel and help you pivot at the right times to continue to feel the way that makes you most happy and satisfied with your postpartum journey.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. Well, we'll have all of our links in the show notes, and this will be going out on both my podcast and yours. So I think we can add in anything extra about specific links we can find there. Awesome. Thanks so much for taking this time to record with me.
Thanks, Lo. It's always so much fun.
Bye. All right, there you have it. Birth plan versus birth preferences. Just because you don't know exactly how your birth will turn out, and just because we cannot control such a natural process as birth and all of the scenarios that might come up and the decisions you need to make doesn't mean that you can't think through various scenarios and what you would prefer to do when various things pop up. Having those conversations with your partner or thinking through them on your own helps you to be more prepared in the moment so you don't feel like anything gets taken from you. With that being said, if you have any questions about crafting your birth preferences, you can schedule a prenatal consultation with me. I would love to see your name pop up in my inbox.